You were not born into meaning, you were born into a story you did not write, surrounded by people who pretend they did. This is not a lullaby. This is a descent into the hollow beneath your thoughts, where truth stops asking for your comfort. And it begins here. Section 1. The lie called you wake each day thinking you are you. That the thoughts bubbling through your skull are authored, chosen, guided. But let's peel that apart. You didn't choose your name. You didn't choose your face, your brain chemistry, your parents, the language that carved the pathways of your mind. You didn't choose the first words you learned, or the tone in which they were spoken. By the time you had any say, your voice was already scripted. Psychologists call it the illusion of the self. Not a metaphor, a literal, neurological construct fabricated by your brain to create cohesion between memories, preferences, and behaviors that were shaped entirely by forces outside your control. This isn't new. Buddhist philosophy has whispered it for centuries. Neuroscience now screams it. There is no central you directing the show, no homunculus behind your eyes, just electrochemical reactions trained to believe in something called identity. The self is a narrative, an unreliable narrator composed of fractured memories and biological impulses masquerading as choice. You are a character in a play you've never read, improvising lines in a theater with no audience. Psychologist Bruce Hood, in The Self-Illusion, presents it plainly. You are not who you think you are. The brain fabricates consistency through confabulation. It rewrites your memories to align with your present beliefs, tricking you into thinking you were always this way. You are edited, rewritten, your childhood, your traumas, your preferences packed. Illusions pulled from 1,000 unchosen sources, and still you wake, believing in me, believing in a voice that says this is what I want, never questioning where that desire was born. Have you ever watched your own thoughts unroll? Without your input, that voice in your head, who exactly is it speaking to? In the Libet experiment, 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet showed that your brain initiates decisions before you are consciously aware of making them. The readiness potential, a burst of brain activity, fires milliseconds before you think. You've chosen. By the time you feel the decision, it's already been made. Free will, a post-it note, your brain slaps onto determinism. You are a puppet who believes in strings only after they've pulled. Now you ask, but if I am not real, if the self is a lie, then what is this pain I feel? What is this fear? It's real. Pain is real. But it belongs to a system, not a self. The system suffers, the story suffers. But you, this you've clung to, does not exist in the way you imagine. Look at your memories. Try to hold one. Steady. Watch how it morphs under scrutiny, how your brain fills in details you never witnessed, edits faces you barely saw, colors moods with the tint of your present emotions. You don't remember your past you. Imagine it again and again. You are not your past. You are its dream. The self, as David Hume declared centuries ago, is nothing more than a bundle of perceptions. No core, no soul, just sensations, impressions, reactions linked together by habit and illusion. And here's the cruelty. You've spent your life protecting this illusion, building a fortress around a ghost. You sought love to validate it. You feared rejection because it threatened it. You worked, struggled, cried, prayed all, to defend a fiction etched in neurons and language. Who are you, really? A voice echoing in a house of mirrors, a mask wearing, a face wearing a mask. Now feel this. The world does not need you to exist. It moves, breathes, decays, blooms utterly indifferent to the construct you guard. Remove you from the equation, and reality does not blink, so what remains when the illusion of self dissolves? The weight, the silence, and a question that has no answer, only gravity. If there is no self, who suffers when you suffer? Section 2. The cruel clockwork of time. You speak of time like it's a river, something you float down, pulled gently by the current of days, always facing forward. But that's another lie you inherited. One of the first. Time does not flow, it does not move. You move through a static, frozen dimension called space-time, and your movement is an illusion generated by perception. Einstein knew this. In his letters, he wrote it as plainly as a whisper in the dark. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen, already is. In relativity, all moments are equally real. Your childhood is still there, not as a memory, but as a location in space-time. So is your death, but you don't see it. You can't, because your consciousness, this illusion of self, moves slice by slice, like a projector running through frames of a film. You call it now, but now is just the frame your perception currently inhabits. You aren't moving through time. You're reading it, line by line, blind to the whole. Philosopher J.M.E. McTaggart called this the unreality of time. To him, the past and future are no different than the words on either side of the sentence you're currently reading. They exist. You're just not there yet, or anymore. And if time is not flowing, if every second is fixed, unchanging, then what is freedom? What is choice? The choice you think you're making now has already been made, already exists, and cannot be altered. You are a marionette of chronology, pulling your own strings in a play already staged. Still think you're free. Your body ages not because time moves, but because entropy increases. Your cells break down. Information decays. Memories frame not from some abstract clock, but because everything falls apart. Statistically, the second law of thermodynamics doesn't care about you. Entropy rises. Always your mind, your very experience of now is a statistical accident, a temporary configuration of particles floating in a high-entropy universe, and one day it will dissolve. But let's descend further. There's a hypothesis in physics called the block universe. It says that time is not dynamic, it's a static 4D structure. Imagine a cube. Inside it are all the moments of your life. Your birth, your first breath, your last word, each frozen like insects in amber. Nothing leaves, nothing enters. The cube doesn't move, you just hallucinate a journey through it. If your future already exists, you cannot change it. If your past is still real, then your regrets are tattooed into the cosmos. There is no becoming, only being. No you will be, only you are. And yet, you still hope. You hope that tomorrow will bring change, that time heals, that time forgives, that the pain will pass, but time does not move. Pain, like joy, is a place, and some version of you is trapped there forever. You feel it, don't you? You feel that haunting sense that you've been here before, that you're caught in something bigger, that maybe every moment of your life is always happening, looping, echoing in a closed circuit of eternity. What if your suffering has no endpoint? What if it's just a frame, playing forever, in the block? This is not theology, this is physics. And the cruelty is this: your mind designed for survival, cannot comprehend timelessness. It clings to narrative, to sequence, to before and after, but the universe doesn't care about story. It cares about structure. And you are nothing more than a spine of frozen seconds, imagined into motion by a dying brain. And when you sleep, when the lights dim and your sense of now fades, you touch the truth. You drift outside the illusion of sequence, outside the lie of next, and you wonder, if time is already written, then what does it mean to wait for anything at all? Section 3. History never happened. You think you know what happened. You think the past is a solid thing, something recorded, archived, agreed upon, a trail of events that led to this moment. The wars, the kings, the revolutions, the heroes and horrors. You think these are facts. But history, like the self, is a curated hallucination. There is no such thing as a true story. There is only what survives. And survival is not determined by truth, but by power. History is written by the victors. It's a cliché you've heard so often you stopped feeling the blood in it. But go deeper. History is a mechanism of memory. And memory, whether personal or collective, is a weaponized fiction. You don't remember the past. You inherit a version of it. Textbooks, statues, timelines, all built by people who wanted to be remembered in a particular way. There are entire empires you've never heard of, entire genocides left out of curricula, entire centuries where the records were burned, rewritten, renamed. You believe in the Middle Ages, but that term was invented after the fact, as if history itself were a novel with clean chapters. You believe in the discovery of America because the victors needed a word that made theft feel like a sunrise. But history is not a timeline. It's a sieve, and what comes through is shaped by those who hold the filter. The Library of Alexandria burned. The Mayan codices were incinerated. Countless oral traditions were silenced, slaughtered, colonized into silence. We build monuments to the few stories that survived and call it truth. But what if truth lies in the ash? There's a phenomenon known as cultural memory suppression, entire generations whose stories are erased, intentionally or not, because they do not serve the dominant narrative. In East Germany, in Cambodia, in indigenous American Thai peoples were taught to forget. Forget the language, forget the rituals, forget the names of the dead. To forget is to become compliant. To forget is to become manageable. To forget is to become rewriteable. And now you, yes, you'll live in a cage made of second-hand memories. You call it education, but it's curation, selective remembering, weaponized forgetting. Even the calendar you live by was chosen for political convenience. Your year is a construct. Your week is an echo of religious wars. Your holidays are patchworks of paganism, conquest, and capitalism. You live inside a time machine built by victors. Even your myths of progress are illusions. Do you think we've advanced? That technology proves evolution. Then why do we still kill for flags? Why do we still ignore genocide until it's profitable to mourn? You believe in the arc of history, but history has no arc. It has a spin, and the winners turn it. And here's the darkest twist. You participate in this forgetting. Every time you scroll past a crisis, every time you repost a meme about revolution without knowing its roots, every time you read headlines instead of books, you become a forgetting machine, a walking algorithm of cultural amnesia. And it gets worse. Neuroscience now confirms that memory is reconstructive. Each time you recall a memory, you alter it. Your brain rewrites details based on current context, beliefs, feelings. Over time, you don't remember events, you remember remembering them. So even your own past, even your childhood, even your most sacred moments are corrupted, bent, infected by the present. You are not a historian of your life. You are its unreliable narrator. And if your memory can't be trusted, and your culture's memory is curated, then what is real? What actually happened? What if no one knows? What if the past has never existed? Only the myth of it. What if we are trapped in a loop of narratives, each pretending to be the final version? You call this knowledge, you call this heritage, you call this civilization, but maybe it's just the longest-running hallucination in human history, and you must now ask yourself, if everything you know about the past is built on ashes and fiction, then how can you be sure anything ever truly happened at all? Section 4. Consciousness is a malfunction. You believe your consciousness is your crown, your proof that you are alive, aware, real. But what if consciousness isn't a gift? What if it's a malfunction, an illusionary accident with no purpose but to suffer? Let's begin with what consciousness is not. It is not necessary for survival. The vast majority of biological processes operate without it. Your heart beats, your lungs breathe, your immune system fights, all without the need for awareness. Most of nature thrives in unconsciousness. Bacteria survive, ants build empires, trees communicate. No self-reflection, no ego, no I think, therefore I am, and yet they persist. So why do you think consciousness is a virtue? Because it flatters you, because you've been told it makes you special, because the voice inside your skull screams that it must matter. But consider this, in evolutionary biology, traits survive because they're adaptive, yet consciousness has no known adaptive function. It cannot be measured, it cannot be proven in others, and it cannot be explained in physical terms. The philosopher David Chalmers calls this the hard problem of consciousness. How does subjective experience arise from neural firing? Why does pain feel like pain? Why does color feel like anything at all? There is no answer, only metaphors, only theories. Some believe consciousness is an epiphenomena side effect of complex processing, like heat from an engine, like foam on a wave, useless, decorative, powerless. You think you make choices, but if your brain could function just as effectively without awareness, what is your awareness actually doing? Nothing. Watching, screaming, begging to be real. Let's go deeper. You don't experience the world, you experience your brain's simulation of it. Your visual cortex edits what you see. Your auditory cortex filters what you hear. Your prefrontal cortex invents reasons for actions already decided. You are not perceiving reality. You are perceiving a user interfacer, simplified, symbolic version of the world that evolution crafted to keep you alive, not to tell you the truth. This is the interface theory of perception, proposed by cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman. According to his research, natural selection does not favor truth, favors fitness, meaning creatures that see reality accurately go extinct. Creatures that hallucinate useful illusions survive. You are one of those creatures. Your consciousness is a hallucination evolved to keep you in the game. But there's a glitch at some point. This hallucination became self-aware, and that is the curse. You became aware that you are aware. You became aware of death, of isolation, of time, of suffering. No other animal sits in the dark contemplating its own extinction. No other creature watches itself decay. You do, and for what? Your consciousness cannot stop your death. It cannot alter reality. It cannot escape its own simulation. It only watches, in horror, in confusion, in longing. You feel emotions, yes, but they are chemical signals, not truths. Love is oxytocin. Sadness is serotonin imbalance. Fear is amygdala activation. You are not feeling. You are reacting to molecules. You are a puppet whose strings are invisible, whose thoughts are echoes, whose awareness is a candle trapped in a hurricane, flickering, useless, desperate for meaning. And still. You cling to it. You say, but I think, I feel. That must count for something. But that voice is the same illusion talking to itself. A recursive loop, an echo chamber. Consider the split brain experiments by Roger Sperry. When the corpus callosum, connecting the brain's hemispheres, was severed, patients developed two consciousnesses each, unaware of the other. One side could speak, the other could act. Neither could explain the other's behavior. So which one was you? The truth, there was never one to begin with. Consciousness is not singular. It is fractured, modular, decentralized. What you call you is just the dominant narrative winning the internal war. You are a parliament of impulses arguing, mutinying, collapsing into temporary agreement. And in that moment of agreement, you call it a decision. But it isn't. It's a ceasefire. One that never lasts. Your mind is not a mirror. It is a funhouse. And every reflection you see is distorted by layers of biology, trauma, and survival instinct. You suffer because you are too conscious. You see too much. You feel what doesn't need to be felt. You invent stories to justify it. You lie to yourself to keep from unraveling. But what if the unraveling is the truth? What if consciousness is not the proof of your existence, but the evidence of your error? What if the very act of knowing yourself is the greatest malfunction nature ever produced? And now, as you lie there, eyes closed, mind spinning, you must ask yourself, if consciousness is a glitch, then who exactly is the one trying so hard to wake up? Section 5. Language is the first prison. Every thought you've ever had was born inside a cage made of words. You believe language is a tool, a bridge. You think it's how we connect, how we share, how we love. But what if it's the first structure built to trap your mind? You were not born with words. You were born with screams, sensations, impulses, raw and unfiltered. Then they taught you to name things, to divide the infinite into labels. This is mother, this is pain, this is good, this is God. And you obeyed. Every time you learned a word, you lost a piece of your original perception. You stopped seeing the world. You started seeing representations. This is what philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein hinted at in his Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world. If you don't have a word for it, you can't think it. If you can't think it, it doesn't exist for you. And so your reality was shaped not by truth, but by linguistic availability. You were taught to sort the world into binaries, light and dark, right and wrong, male and female, self and other. But nature does not speak this way. Nature does not know categories. It only knows chaos, flow, spectrum, dissolution. Language forces precision where there is ambiguity, imposes structure where there is fluidity. It becomes a map mistaken for the territory. And now you wander the map, blind to the terrain. Consider the Parahu people of the Amazon. Their language has no past tense, no numbers, no concept of linear time. To them, nothing exists except what is seen and heard now. They live outside the prison. They do not tell stories about origin or destiny. They simply exist. But you cannot stop narrating, because without the story, you collapse. Language gave you identity, but at the cost of presence. You live in the grammar of ghosts. Every sentence pulls you further from direct experience. I am happy, I am broken, I am free. Each phrase carves a groove in your mind until you can no longer feel outside the sentence. You mistake the word for the thing. You say love as if it describes a sensation, but the sensation came first. The word is a retroactive label, a placeholder. Your feelings are trapped inside symbols. Symbols that have been sold, weaponized, politicized, sterilized. Think of freedom. What does it mean to an American, to a prisoner, to a dying animal? It means nothing and everything. A shape-shifting illusion, dressed in words. George Orwell warned of this in 1984. But if thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought. Control the words, control the people. This is why propaganda works, why slogans override truth, because the brain craves simplicity, repetition, rhyme. Language becomes a drug. You repeat it until you forget what it meant. And now, the deepest irony. I am using language to tell you this. I am using the very prison bars to explain the prison. So let me speak plainly. You will never think beyond the words you know. You will never feel beyond the metaphors you've inherited. Your memories are catalogued in language. Your hopes scripted in syllables. Your fears filed under titles. And what of silence? You fear it. You fill it. Because in silence, there are no words. To protect you from yourself. No story, no justification, no identity, only sensation. Only the unbearable weight of unfiltered being. But there's more. Language creates the illusion of continuity. You speak of yourself as if you are stable. I was, I am, I will be. But each I is different. Each I is momentary. Each I is invented by grammar. The self does not persist. Only the sentence does. Without language, there is no identity. Only perception. Only the now. And yet you are addicted to description. You crave to be named. Even in death, you want an epitaph. Because, if no one says who you were, you're afraid you never existed at all. But here's the final crack. Language evolves. It erodes. Words change. Meanings shift. Even your deepest truths are written in sand. So, ask yourself, if every thought you have is made of words and words are unstable, then how can anything you believe be real? Section 6. Morality is a mirror of power. You believe in good and evil. You believe in justice, in right and wrong, in heroes and villains. You've spent your life trying to be good, to be kind, to be moral. But have you ever asked to whom morality is not written in the sky? It is not universal. It is not eternal. It is a mirror held by the hand of whoever holds the power. You were taught to believe that morality is objective, that there are rules that transcend culture, time, and species. But history mocks this belief. At one time, it was moral to own people, to burn women as witches, to execute children for stealing bread, to murder in the name of gods now forgotten. And they didn't do these things with shame. They did them with virtue. with righteousness, with sermons, laws, and public applause, because morality is not about truth, it's about order. It's about control. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this on the genealogy of morals. He exposed the roots of goodness as value system created by the powerless to moralize their weakness. The weak make up what they lack in strength by condemning the powerful as evil. The slave calls the master cruel. The poor called the rich greedy. The obedient called the disobedient sinners. And from that resentment, they create morality. But morality, once established, becomes weaponized. And those in power twist it to protect themselves. Today, governments bomb children in the name of peace. Corporations exploit the weak while preaching ethics. Institutions hide abuse under robes of holiness. And you still cling to moral language. You say that's not right, as if your feelings shape the cosmos. But your outrage has no weight beyond your tribe. What's good to one group is evil to another. What's evil to your ancestors is a holiday to you. So what does that make? Morality, a script, a flag, a leash. Consider this, your sense of morality is not yours. It was installed. From birth, you were rewarded for obedience, punished for rebellion. You were taught the stories that justified your group's behavior, and now you parrot them, believing them to be truth. But if you were born in another place, another era, another class, you would be defending something else entirely. You might be burning books instead of reading them. You might be slaughtering innocents instead of mourning them. And you would still call yourself good, because morality is not anchored in truth. It's anchored in belonging. You say, but I feel what's right in my heart. But your heart is a reflection of your conditioning. You say, but I wouldn't hurt anyone, until someone tells you it's necessary, patriotic, sacred, and you obey, because morality is plastic, because guilt is programmable. Because your conscience is a social artifact, not a divine compass. Even your deepest convictions were carved into you by fear, reward, repetition. And here's the sickest part. You still need morality. You cling to it to avoid madness. Because without it, what stops the knife? What stops the betrayal? What stops you? But this is the horror. Nothing stops it. We are not moral. We are obedient. We are reactive. We are rationalizing machines. And what we call goodness is often just a disguise for survival. Your kindness, learned. Your shame, installed. Your guilt, manufactured by systems that would collapse if you saw through them. Even the golden rule, do unto others, only exists because you fear the inverse. You don't do good. You do what keeps the tribe from turning on you. So now what? If morality is an illusion, then what are you without it? A calculating animal, a mimic, a shadow playing roles. You fear this thought. You reject it. You scream, there must be right and wrong. But ask yourself, if morality changes with power, culture, and fear, then was it ever anything but a mask? Section 7. Death was always here. You think death is a moment, a punctuation mark at the end of the sentence. You think it happens at the end, that you're safe for now, alive until proven otherwise. But that's another lie you've been allowed to believe. Death doesn't arrive. It reveals from the moment you were born, death has been with you. It is not a stranger who knocks. It is the room you've always been inside. Every second of your life is a step toward entropy. Every breath is a transaction of decay. Every heartbeat is a countdown. And here's the truth, your mind refuses to hold. You are not moving toward death. You are dying now. There is no line between life and death. There is only movement from lesser to greater disintegration. Biologically, your body began to fail before you could speak. Cells miscopy, DNA phrase, oxidation creeps. You are not living with the possibility of death, you are participating in it. The illusion that death is somewhere in the distance is a comfort mechanism, a neurological veil, because to live consciously in the presence of death is to unravel. But let's pull back that veil. You do not fear being dead. You fear ceasing to experience. You fear the annihilation of the observer. But the observer is a mirage, and the fear is misplaced. Consider this: every night, in dreamless sleep, you vanish. No thought, no time, no you. And yet you do not mourn those hours. You call them rest. So what makes death different? The permanence. And permanence is unbearable to your story-addicted mind. Religion was born to solve this discomfort. A heaven, a hell, a reincarnation cycle. Anything but the final silence. But all stories end, and your story is being written in reverse. There's a phenomenon in physics called the arrow of time. It only moves one direction toward entropy. This isn't just poetic. It's thermodynamic law. Everything breaks. Everything slows. Everything ends. Even the universe itself is dying. Galaxies stretching into cold blackness. Stars burning out. Matter dissolving into radiation. There will come a time when no structure remains, only cold, featureless decay. Death isn't just part of your story. It is the architecture of reality. But here's the cruelty. You are the only animal that knows it's dying. You live your life carrying a secret funeral inside you. You try to hide it with rituals, birthdays, awards, memories. You try to distract yourself with achievement, with intimacy, with screens. But beneath it all is a whisper. You are temporary. No matter what you build, it will collapse. No matter who remembers you, they too will be forgotten. The names of empires dissolve into dust. The monuments erode. The languages die, and you are less than a speck, not even a comma in the sentence of time. So what then, if death is not an event but a process? And if your life is just a brief flicker in a dying cosmos, then what is the value of your desires, your dreams, your suffering? Even grief will vanish. Every love will be lost. Every face erased. Every name unspoken. You think this is bleak, but it is the foundation beneath your existence. Your birthright is oblivion. You were not made to last. You were made to witness the unraveling internally, then externally. There is no exemption, no rescue, no enlightened state that will outlive the entropy. Only decay, only silence, only return. And perhaps the most disturbing thought, you have already died. The child you were is gone. The teenager, the idealist, the lover, all versions now extinct. You die in pieces, your cells, your memories, your roles. Each version of you disappears, moment by moment, without ceremony. Death is not ahead, it is within, and always has been. And now you lie there, clinging to the warmth of breath, of thought, of awareness, as if that will make you real, as if presence can postpone dissolution. But the flame does not fear the wind, because it was born knowing it would vanish. And now you must ask, if death has always been part of you, then what part of you was ever truly alive? Section 8. Memory is a lie you tell yourself. You think memory is your anchor. You think it holds. you steady, that it tells you who you are, where you've been, what you've survived. You trust it blindly. You say, I remember, but memory does not preserve, it invents. You are not recalling events. You are reconstructing them like a detective sketching a crime you barely witnessed. Neuroscience has confirmed what philosophers long suspected. Your memories are not stored. Like photographs, they are fragmented, rewired each time they are accessed. They degrade, they mutate, and your mind fills in the gaps with fiction. This is known as reconsolidation. Every time you remember something, your brain alters it subtly, quietly. You change your own past simply by thinking about it. So, the childhood moment you cherish, the betrayal you relive, the trauma you swear defined you, it has been rewritten by time, by mood, by suggestion, by your current self's agenda. Studies show how easily memories can be implanted. People can be convinced they committed crimes that never happened. They can describe details, even feel guilt, because memory does not need to be real. It only needs to be believable. What does this mean for your identity? It means the self you claim is based on stories that are fundamentally false, lies you tell to feel consistent, narratives stitched from emotional residue and social necessity. You are not the sum of your experiences. You are the sum of your imagined experiences. And worse, even your first-person perspective is not immune. There's a phenomenon called the reminiscence. You remember your early adulthood more vividly, not because it was more important, but because your brain imprints those years more deeply to maintain a coherent self-narrative. It edits the rest, erases, compresses, deletes. You do not remember your life. You remember the version of life that best supports your current illusion of self. And what about dreams? The hazy memories you sometimes confuse with waking life. They often leak into memory unnoticed, contaminating it. Your mind cannot reliably separate fantasy from reality. So what is real? Only what you can verify, but memory is unverifiable. It is a subjective hallucination, dressed up in the costume of objectivity, even in the courtroom. Eyewitness testimony is now considered dangerously unreliable. People remember weapons that weren't there, faces that weren't present, words never spoken. And yet in your internal courtroom, your conscience, you let memory rule everything. You judge yourself by recollections that never happened. As you recall them, you punish yourself for mistakes you might not have made. You forgive those who might have hurt you more than you remember. You live in a house made of haunted fictions. And what of forgetting? You think forgetting is failure, but it is defense. Your brain erases what it cannot afford to keep, to protect you, to maintain the myth of continuity. Without this erasure, you would collapse. Those you've loved, you do not remember them as they were. You remember them as you needed them to be, to justify your actions, to preserve your pride, to avoid collapse. And the moment you're living right now, already slipping, already fragmenting into what will soon be a false recollection, you cannot stop it. You cannot preserve anything. You are a vessel leaking stories as fast as it collects them, and yet you cling to memory like it's sacred. You believe that what you remember is who you are. But if your memories are lies, if your past is a shifting hallucination, then who is you? A myth of your own making, a collage of fiction, a shadow trying to remember light. And when your memory finally fails, when the names fade, when the faces blur, when your story unravels in the slow death of dementia, who remains? No one. There is no you, apart from the stories you cannot trust. And now, as you search your mind for one memory that feels pure, intact, untouchable, you will fail, because even the act of trying changes it. And so you must ask, if every memory is a lie, then what part of your life was ever truly lived? Section 9. The body is a puppet of hunger. You speak of your body like it's yours. You say, my hand, my heart, my mind, as if ownership implies control. But you are not the master of your flesh. You are the audience, reacting, begging it to obey. You think your body serves you, but it serves something deeper, older, something that has no name, only instinct. Hunger. You were built by hunger, formed in its image. Your mouth, your stomach, your tongue, your muscles, very part of you is a machine for seeking. Seeking sugar, seeking warmth, seeking movement, seeking stimulation. And you think you make choices. You think you exercise willpower. But your will is a ghost floating on the tides of ancient biological needs. Ask yourself, when was the last time you acted without being pulled by desire, fear, or discomfort? Even your morality, your empathy, your dreams, they are not free. They are shaped by chemistry, by gut bacteria, by blood sugar, by hormones whispering orders through the bloodstream. Studies show that decisions change based on hunger. Judges give harsher sentences before lunch. People become more racist, more aggressive, more impulsive when blood glucose drops. You are a slave to a molecule, and your emotions, just chemicals designed to manipulate you into behavior. Anxiety drives caution, shame drives conformity, joy drives repetition. None of them care whether you suffer. They only care whether you continue. You think love is transcendent, but oxytocin surges after sex, not for romance, but for bonding, for resource security. You think awe is spiritual, but it's a dopamine reward system triggered by pattern recognition. You think your pain is noble, but it's just a signal. Avoid this, not to teach, not to enlighten, to survive. Even your thoughts are built on a platform of digestion and reproduction. You are a primate pretending to be divine. Your posture, your speech, your movements, every gesture has been shaped by mating strategies and tribal survival. Why? Do you walk the way you do? Why do you clench your jaw when challenged? Why do you raise your voice when you feel dismissed? Because your body remembers wars your mind has never fought. The psychologist William James said it simply: we don't cry because we're sad because we cry. Emotion follows the body, not the other way around. And here's the brutal twist: you cannot escape it. Try fasting, meditating, ascending, the hunger returns. The body calls, the stomach tightens, the head spins, the skin crawls. You are not a soul in a body. You are a body that invented the salt to cope with its own decay. Your spine is coiled like a snake because it evolved from one. Your limbs are the inheritance of creatures that crawled out of the ocean. Your brainstem still flinches at shadows in case they're predators. You are not modern. You are ancient biology in denial, and as you lie still, trying to calm your breath, it is not you who slows it. It is the body, evaluating safety, running checks, conserving energy. Even sleep isn't your choice. It's an override. The body shuts down the illusion so it can maintain itself. You don't decide to sleep. You surrender, and one day soon, perhaps you will not wake up. Not because the mind lets go, but because the body has no more hunger left to chase. And when that happens, there will be no final thought, no closing monologue, only the quiet deactivation of a biological machine. No soul rising, no curtain falling, just systems shutting down, one by one. So you must ask yourself now, if your body is the one in charge and your mind is just a passenger, then who, exactly, have you spent your whole life trying to become? Section 10. The universe never needed you. You've been told you matter, that your life has meaning, that your existence is part of some grand design, cosmic, divine, or biological. You've been told you're special, but you were told wrong. The universe is not your parent. It did not notice your arrival. It will not mourn your departure. There are more stars than grains of sand on every beach on Earth, and each of those stars may host planets, and each of those planets may host life, and each of those lives may wonder if it was chosen. But the universe does not choose. It indifferently permits. Your existence is not a miracle. It is a mathematical accident, convergence of chance and entropy. You were born because particles collided in just the right way, on a planet that spun in just the right orbit, under a sun that will one day explode, and when it does, everything you know will become ash, not remembered, not judged, just erased. You imagine a narrative that humans are the pinnacle of creation, but the planet thrived without you for billions of years. It will thrive without you again. The dinosaurs ruled for 160 million years. You've barely managed 200,000, and yet you write poems, build statues, sing anthems to your imagined importance. But importance is not a property of reality. It's a story whispered by frightened primates. You believe you have purpose, but purpose is not embedded in atoms. It is not carved into DNA. It is not written in the stars. It is invented to ease the nausea of being alive. Even your gods, crafted in your own image, speaking your language, feeling your emotions. What arrogance! You say, the universe has a plan, but physics has no plan, only laws. Unyielding, impartial, blind. Gravity does not care if you fall in love. Radiation does not care if you pray. Entropy does not care if you beg for meaning. There is no cosmic scoreboard, no tally of your goodness, no final judgment, only particles, dancing in predetermined silence. And if there is intelligence out there, it is not watching you, it is not waiting for you, it is not coming to rescue you from your own loneliness. Even if aliens exist, they do not care. The Fermi paradox asks, if the universe is teeming with life, why haven't we seen it? The answer may be this: because no one is looking, because no one cares, because life is not sacred, is statistical, and your planet, just a pale blue dot, suspended in a sunbeam, rotating silently in a forgotten corner of a dying galaxy. Carl Sagan called it beautiful, but beauty is a human word. The cosmos does not see beauty. It only sees behavior. You think the universe is vast, but it is also empty. Vastness without warmth, infinity without intention, and utopia, fragile, temporary walk through it whispering, I matter, but to what? Your thoughts don't reach beyond the ionosphere. Your love does not bend the orbit of a single moon. Your pain echoes only in your own skull. You could disappear now, and the world would continue. Your country, your city, your friends, they would grieve, then adapt, then forget. Even the language you speak will one day die. Its vowels swallowed by time, its consonants buried under new alphabets. You were not born to fulfill a mission. You were not sent here. You arrived. like mold in the corner of a room, like a spark on a fuse you did not light, and when you leave, the universe will not notice. It will not send a sign. It will not shift its orbit. It will not flinch. You will never. The protagonist. There was no story, and yet you go on asking, if the universe never needed me, then why do I ache as if it should? Section 11. Reality is a negotiated hallucination. You wake up, open your eyes, and call it real. The world's solid, predictable, shared. You believe that what you see is there, that what you hear exists, that what you feel belongs to you. But your reality is not real. It is an agreement between blind systems, hallucinated just well enough to survive. You are not seeing the world. You are seeing your brain's best guess. This is not a metaphor. Neuroscience calls it predictive coding. Your brain doesn't passively receive information from the world, it predicts what you should see, hear, feel, and then fills in the details. You hallucinate what's out there. Then you check if it matches. And if it doesn't, your brain adjusts reality to fit the prediction. You think you see with your eyes, but your eyes see only fractured data blurs of light and shadow, raw and uninterpreted. It's your visual cortex that invents coherence. It creates edges where there are none. It adds motion, color, continuity. The world you see, it's a model, a simulation your brain constructs in real time. This is not a glitch. It's how perception works. Anil Seth, a neuroscientist studying consciousness, calls this a controlled hallucination that we agree upon to survive, and it gets worse. Everything you experience, every sound, smell, sensation is processed after it happens. There's a delay, milliseconds, but measurable. Your brain stitches these delays into an illusion of immediacy, a fabricated now. So even your present moment is retroactively edited, and if that moment is fake, what can be trusted? Not your senses. You've been tricked before. Optical illusions, phantom limbs, voices that aren't there. Dacia vu, all. Evidence that your brain can create experience without input. So what is real? Is it the external world, the objects, the space, the people? You don't have access to that. You only have access to sensory interpretation, processed, filtered, emotionalized, and those interpretations differ. What you see is not what others see. Colorblindness, trauma, hallucinations, language, culture, are schizophrenic and anormal. A person can look at the same room and inhabit entirely different realities. Which one is real? Neither, or both. Because reality is not absolute, it is negotiated. We build it together. We agree on names, on meanings, on rules. We say, this is a table, this is pain, this is love. But those are not facts. They are shared assumptions. If enough people agree, it becomes truth. If you disagree, you're insane, or prophetic, or forgotten. And what about dreams? In dreams, you accept absurdity. You run through melting cities. You talk to the dead. You fly, you suffer, you feel, and in the moment, it's real. So tell me what makes waking life more real than dreaming. Only that you wake up into consensus. But what if you never woke up? What if this is the dream? What if your real life is just the most stable hallucination available? And then there's the body. You think your body grounds you, gives you reference. But even your sense of embodiment is simulated. Your brain maintains a body mapper, model of what it thinks your body is doing. And when that model gets confused, you feel disembodied dizzy, unreal. You think your body is one thing, but it is millions of organisms, cells, bacteria, viruses. You are not a person. You are a colony, a collective hallucinating unity. So why do you trust your experience? Because you have no choice. Because your brain must believe itself in order to function. But beneath that belief is a void. And what lives in that void? Nothing you can name, nothing you can sense. Only the terrifying possibility that everything you call real is just your brain keeping you from going insane. And when it finally slips, when the hallucination no longer aligns with consensus, you are labeled broken, sick, mad. But maybe the mad see something true, something unbearable, something raw, and now you lie there, trying to feel the bed beneath you, listening to sounds you cannot prove, waiting for a sleep that you can't define. And you must ask, if reality is a hallucination we agree on, then what happens when you stop agreeing? Section 12. Identity is a costume that forgets it's a costume. You say, this is who I am. But who is that? The voice, the name, the role you play when people are watching. Strip away your job, your language, your memories, your body. What remains? You think identity is stable, but identity is performed, an ever-adapting costume tailored to each audience. And over time, you forget it was ever a performance. You weren't born a self. You were born a mirror, reflecting gestures, intonations, approval. You became what your environment rewarded. You smiled to be loved. You lied to be safe. You conformed to survive. This is the social self, as defined by psychologist George Herbert Mead, a self made of feedback, a self that does not exist alone, a self that vanishes in isolation. You exist because you are seen, but being seen requires a mask, and the longer you wear it, the more it sticks, until one day you forget there was ever a face beneath it. And what of your name? That sound you respond to like a dog. It wasn't yours. It was given, assigned, repeated until it became you. But you did not choose it. You inherited it like furniture in a burning house, and yet you build your entire mythology around it. Your signature, your reputation, your gravestone, as if a word can contain a life, and gender, another script, performed from birth, enforced through color, voice, posture, punishment. You don't walk a certain way because it feels natural. You walk that way because you've been watched, and culture, a costume of costumes, accent, fashion, beliefs, humor, rage. You are a collage of expectations, an echo of your tribe. Even rebellion is scripted. Even nonconformity has uniforms. You say, I'm unique. But every word, every gesture, every ambition has been borrowed. You didn't invent yourself. You were assembled by trauma, by media, by family systems, by survival reflexes you can't name. The therapist Carl Rogers once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. But what if there is no just as I am? What if there is no baseline to return to? Only layers, only performance, only invention. And what of your moral self? You think you're a good person, but goodness is a role too. You behave kindly because it fits your narrative. You need to see yourself as consistent. You need others to believe in the myth of you. You help to be seen. You donate to be remembered. You apologize to protect your image. Even your guilt is self-preservation. You are not good. You are invested. And your roles, mother, artist, thinker, survivor, do they still exist when no one is looking? Strip the setting, the stage, the audience, and tell me what remains. You think memory holds you together, but we've already shattered that illusion. You think the body is your anchor, but the body shifts, it decays, it betrays. You think your mind is you, but your thoughts contradict, your desires clash, your voice changes in every room. Are not a person. You are a process called identity construction, and it never stops. And when you say, "This is who I am," you are only pointing at the current version, the one that survived today. Yesterday's self, dead, forgotten, buried under new phrases, new fears, new filters. You are a book that rewrites its own pages every time it is opened, and yet pretends to be original. Even your suffering is part of the role. You cling to pain because it defines you. Without it, who are you? Without the wound, what mask would you wear? So you narrate your trauma. You rehearse your betrayals. You build altars to the past, because without them, the stage collapses. And now, in the quiet, you search for your core. You whisper, "Who am I, really?" But there is no answer, because the question assumes something that was never there. Is no real you, only layers, only echoes, only the desperate performance of a mask that no longer knows it's a mask. And now you must ask, if your identity is a costume that forgets it's a costume, then who exactly is wearing it? Section 13. Dreams are the skeleton keys of madness. You close your eyes and the rules dissolve. Gravity forgets itself. Time fractures, the dead speak. The past merges with strangers you've never met. And somehow it all makes sense until you wake. You call it dreaming. You treat it like a playground, a blur, an afterthought. But your dreams are not noise. They are signals from beneath the masts. The average person dreams for 2 hours every night. That's nearly 1/12 of your entire life. A reality you enter, involuntarily live through, and forget. You don't question this, but you should. Why? Does your brain do this? Why spend precious energy simulating unreal worlds in the dark? Freud said dreams are wish fulfillment. Jung said they are messages from the unconscious. Modern neuroscience calls them neurological noise, a byproduct of memory consolidation. But none of these explain the weight, the meaningful absurdity, the feeling that some dreams are more real than waking life. You felt it, the dream that leaves you breathless, the dream that feels like a warning, the dream that knows your secrets. That's because dreaming is not rest. It is the theater where your inner fractures rehearse. It is the back room where your mind performs unauthorized experiments. You dream of falling because your foundation is cracking. You dream of being chased because your truth is catching up. You dream of flying because something inside you wants out. Dreams are not random. They are symbolic breakdowns. Your brain testing its own limits. Your subconscious leaking through the seams. And you are the last to know. During REM sleep, your logical brain, the prefrontal cortex, goes quiet. Your emotional brain, the limbic system, becomes dominant. You enter a world where logic dies and meaning takes over. But meaning without logic is madness. And that's what dreams are. Sanctioned madness. They let you be mad in a way waking life cannot permit. They let you murder, love, dissolve, become. And you wake up unpunished. But sometimes the madness doesn't stay contained. Sleep paralysis, night terrors, lucid dreams, states where the walls between the dream and the real begin to rot. You feel a presence in the room, a figure in the corner. You scream, but nothing moves. You think it's supernatural. but it's your own mind showing you what you've buried. This is not a glitch. This is your unconscious breaking protocol. And what of recurrent dreams? The hallway you always return to, the stranger with familiar eyes, the endless staircase. These are not dreams. These are architecture. They are the places you go when your conscious mind lets go. Places built from trauma, desire, memory, and symbolic logic. And the dream self, the version of you inside the dream, isn't always you. Sometimes you are the observer, sometimes the victim, sometimes the monster, because your identity isn't real there, it's fluid, reassigned, shattered, and that's the truth dreams whisper. You were never just one person. You contained fragment selves that never made it to daylight, voices you silenced, memories you've edited, desires you swore were gone. They live in your dreams, and some of them are waiting. You've had dreams that predicted, dreams that healed, dreams that violated, dreams that broke your sense of time, and when you wake, you dismiss them. Because this world, the real one, won't let you speak in symbols. It demands linearity. It demands sanity. But your dreams are not bound by those demands. They are truth in disguise. In ancient cultures, dreams were portals, oracles, warnings, sacred acts. Now they are brain farts. Now they are jokes. But what if the ancients were closer to the truth? What if your dream life is your actual life? And this waking state is just the mask you wear between dreams. What if you are dreaming now? Descartes wondered the same. He asked how we could ever know we weren't dreaming. His answer, you can't, and neuroscience agrees. The brain activity in REM sleep and waking states is nearly identical. So why is one called dream and the other real? Consensus? Nothing more. And here's the final fracture. People with damage to their dreaming centers lose something deeper than sleep. They lose creativity, emotional regulation, self-integration. Dreams aren't useless. They're essential. They're the only place left where your mind is allowed to tell the truth coded, symbolic, horrifying. And now you must ask, if dreams are the only place where you're fractured, mind speaks freely then what is waking life, but a lie you're forced to tell yourself. Section 14. Free will is a stage play performed for no one. You like to believe you choose. You choose your breakfast, your words, your lovers, your God. You say, I have free will. But watch closely. The moment of decision arrives. You feel it forming, emerging from silence like a wave. You say yes. You say no. You feel responsible. But that feeling is a post-production effect. Neuroscientists like Benjamin Libet proved it. In his experiments, electrical signals in the brain readiness potentials were detected milliseconds before subjects reported the conscious intention to move. The brain acts. Then the mind claims authorship. You are not the director. You are the narrator desperately trying to make the script look like improv. The idea that you are in control, it's a necessary delusion, a comforting hallucination to prevent collapse, because without it, you're not a person. You're a mechanism. Even the philosopher Spinoza saw this centuries ago. Men are conscious of their actions, but ignorant of the causes by which they are determined. You feel like the author of your choices, but you are only ever choosing between options handed to you by genes, by history, by chance. You did not choose your brain. You did not choose the moment in time into which you were born. You did not choose the culture that formed your values. You did not choose the trauma that shaped your preferences. Your free choices Are dominoes already falling before you knew there was a table? And here's the irony. You still feel guilt. You still feel pride. You reward and punish yourself for choices that were never yours. Why? Because the illusion of free will serves a function. It sustains moral systems. It fuels capitalism. It justifies punishment. If people stopped believing they were responsible, society would lose its grip. So, we maintain the theater. We clap for actors who never wrote their lines. We boo villains who never chose the script. And what about change? You think you can change, that with enough discipline, therapy, meditation, you can become someone else. But change requires will. And if will is not free, then who is doing the changing? Even your desire to change was shaped by forces outside your control. So what's left? Determinism. Some physicists believe the universe is fully deterministic, that if you knew the position of every particle, you could predict every future state. That includes you, your thoughts, your regrets, your love. But quantum mechanics introduces randomness, not freedom. A dice roll is not a choice, so you are caught between two prisons. Determinism, where all is fixed. Randomness, where nothing is chosen, and nowhere. In that spectrum does you exist. You are the audience of your own thoughts. You're watching a movie you mistake for reality. And you think you're directing it because the camera happens to be inside your head. But the script is ancient. The plot is set. The actors are reacting. And you are applauding or panicking after the fact. And here's the final cruelty. Even knowing this, you will go on believing. You'll say, no, I chose to listen to this. I chose to think this through. But that thought, it rose on its own. You're already too late. And so you must ask now, if every choice you make is either predetermined or random, then what part of you was ever free to begin with? At forgets it's a costume, then who, exactly, is wearing it? Section 15. Loneliness is the only proof you exist. You feel it in the quiet. Not the absence of people, but the unbearable presence of yourself. A slow, heavy ache behind your ribs that says, you are separate. You are alone. You try to fill it with noise, with sex, with conversation, with God. But nothing silences that pulse, because loneliness is not a symptom. It is the diagnosis. You are trapped inside a body you didn't build, surrounded by minds you can never enter. No one will ever feel what you feel. Not exactly, not completely. You say, I love you, but what you mean is, I want you to guess what I'm experiencing. You tell stories not to reveal yourself, but to translate. And the translation is never clean. Your pain gets lost in phrasing. Your joy diluted by grammar. Your truth tangled in hesitation. Every conversation is an approximation. Every embrace a negotiation. You get close, but never inside. The philosopher Martin Buber spoke of ithar relationships, moments when two people truly meet. Beyond roles, beyond masks. But those moments are rare and fleeting, and easily confused with performance. Most of the time, you live in ayet, using others, being used, orbiting, not colliding, and the digital age has deepened the divide. You are connected to everyone and known by no one. You scroll, you comment, you emoji your way through the void, but it's still there. That ache, that sense that no one sees you, the way you see yourself. And maybe that's because they can't, because the you inside is not the same as the you. They perceived your face is their interpretation, your voice their filter, your essence, lost in translation, so you begin to perform, to manage perception, to become who you think they need, and every layer of performance adds distance, more smiles, more silence, more pretending, until one day you forget what it felt like to be unfiltered, and still, you crave it. You crave connection, not the touch, but the witnessing, to be known, but no one can enter. They knock, they speak, they guess, but your interior world has no map, and so you wander, surrounded by bodies, swallowed in attention, still alone, and now you ask, what's the point? Why keep reaching? Because loneliness is not proof of your failure. It is proof of your consciousness. A rock does not feel alone. A machine does not ache for being misunderstood, but you do, because you are aware. You are separated by awareness itself, and this is the paradox. The more conscious you become, the more alone you must be. You begin to see the gaps in speech, in gesture, in memory. You see how far everyone is from each other and how far they are from themselves, and you realize loneliness is not the result of being unseen. It is the result of seeing too much. You see the mask on your friend's face. You hear the lie in your own voice. You feel the distance in every "I'm fine." And you ache, not for people, but for oneness, the primal oneness. Before language, before separation, before you and me. But that place is gone. The moment you became aware, you became other, and now you live in the aftershock, the slow fallout of individuality. And even if someone knew you completely, felt your pain, loved your whole, echoed your inner world, they too would still be alone in their own skull. You cannot merge. There is no fusion, only collision, only approximation. And now, in the stillness, you must sit with this. The deeper you know yourself, the more isolated you become. And yet, you keep hoping for someone, for understanding, for home. But ask yourself, if no one can ever truly know, you then, who are you hoping will rescue you from your own reflection? Section 16. Love is the sweetest delusion biology ever sold, you say. I'm in love, as if that means something timeless. As if that phrase holds the same truth for poets and parasites. But love is not eternal. Love is not pure. Love is the most beautiful trick evolution ever played on you. You feel drawn, obsessed, devoted. You say soulmate. You say forever. But beneath the poetry is chemistry. Bonding protocols wired into flesh. Oxytocin, vasopressin, dopamine. A cocktail that simulates destinies. So you'll stay long enough to protect the offspring. You think you're choosing love. But love is choosing you. More precisely, biology is. You are just the vessel. The ancient brain doesn't care if you're happy. It cares if the genes get passed on. It invented romantic delusion to keep you from noticing the trap. You say, I feel seen. But what you feel is mirroring. A psychological effect where the other person reflects your values, desires, wounds. They validate the story you already believe about yourself. You don't fall in love with them. You fall in love with the version of you that comes alive in their presence. This is why love feels transcendent. Because for a moment, the self dissolves. You escape the burden of individuality. You become two bodies, pretending to be one. But it never lasts. The chemicals fade, the stories change, the mask slips, and suddenly the God becomes a stranger. And what happens then? You mourn. You rage. You ache. not because something divine has died, but because the illusion has collapsed. The philosopher Alain de Botton said, "Every fall into love involves the triumph of hope over knowledge. Hope that this time it's different. Hope that you've transcended biology. Hope that someone will complete you. But completion is not love. It is codependence. A merging of two unfinished people trying to escape the horror of being alone. And yet love feels real, because it gives you language, structure, direction. It lets you say, this is why I exist. And for a while, that's enough. But love is also control, possession, a silent contract of expectations. You want them to stay the same, to meet your needs, to fill the void you refuse to face. You love their usefulness, their familiarity, their ability to reflect the myth you want to believe. This is not evil, it is survival. Even the heartbreak serves a function. It ensures you remember, so you don't make the same biological mistake again. But sometimes you do. Again and again, because the illusion is sweeter than the void. You say, I miss them. But what you miss is yourself with them. The version of you that felt coherent, held, worthy. So is love fake? No, but it is constructed by biology, by trauma, by culture, by need. Love is the most beautiful lie you've ever agreed to believe. And you must believe it, because without it, the species dies. But that belief comes at a cost. You sacrifice clarity, you surrender autonomy, you accept pain, and in exchange, you get a temporary suspension of despair. But ask yourself this, if love is just chemicals, if connection is just pattern recognition, if the other person is just a canvas for your projections, then who, exactly, have you been giving your heart to? Section 17. Progress is a myth we tell to distract from collapse. Believe the world is getting better, that we are advancing, evolving, ascending, that each generation rises from the wreckage of the last. A little wiser, a little freer. You call it progress. But what if that word is just a sedative? What if the idea of progress is not truth, but a coping mechanism? We invented progress to make history seem like a staircase, a steady climb from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge, from brutality to compassion. But history isn't a staircase. It's a cycle. Empires rise, empires fall. Technologies evolve. Violence adapts. The Roman aqueduct becomes the surveillance satellite. The printing press becomes propaganda. The wheel becomes the tank. And you mistake complexity for wisdom. But a machine can grow more complex as it decays. You say, we're more connected than ever. But loneliness is epidemic. You say, we've never been more free. But your data is mined. Your desires are shaped by algorithms. Your thoughts are nudged by invisible code. This isn't progress. It's optimization. You aren't evolving. You're being engineered to be faster, more productive, more compliant even. Your idea of happiness has been monetized. Wellness is sold. Meditation is branded. Therapy is subscription-based. You live in a system that profits from your emptiness and calls it self-improvement. And what of moral progress? We abolished slavery, yes, but we built new chains through debt, through prisons, through borders. We ended witch trials, but we invented mental institutions. We celebrate rights while exploiting children to build our devices. This isn't justice, it's rebranding. The philosopher Theodore Adorno warned, progress is not the progress of humanity, but of domination. Technology doesn't liberate, it intensifies control. Every new device is a leash disguised as convenience. Your phone tracks you, your apps addict you, your social media radicalizes you, and still you believe, because belief in progress gives you hope. It lets you say, it's getting better. It will all be okay. But that's a lullaby. A song to keep you from noticing the fire under your bed, climate collapse, mass extinction, mental illness epidemic, political systems fracturing. You scroll past the headlines and whisper to yourself, but we'll figure it out. That whisper is progress theology, the belief that history has a direction, that we are being led somewhere purposeful. But history isn't a train, it's a wildfire, and you are standing in its path, pointing to your smartwatch. Even your measurement of time, years, centuries, futures, is a human overlay. The planet does not know progress, it knows balance, and what happens when that balance is broken? We broke it. And we keep calling the debris innovation. You say, but we have medicine now, yes, and we use it to survive systems that make us sick. You say, but we've cured diseases, yes, and replaced them with psychic wounds we cannot name. You say, but at least we know more. But knowing more has not made us wiser. It has made us noisier, more distracted, more afraid. Progress gave you speed, but not direction. It gave you information, but not understanding. It gave you freedom, but only the kind sold in subscriptions and locked behind screens. And you must ask, if progress is real, why do we still feel lost? Why does each breakthrough deepen the ache? Why does the future look more like a polished collapse than a rising dawn? Maybe because progress was never the goal, only the disguise. And now you must ask, if everything you call better is just evolution wearing a prettier mask, then what exactly are you moving toward? Section 18. God is the shape of your loneliness. You whisper into the silence and hope. Something hears you. You beg in the dark, not because you expect an answer, but because the silence is unbearable. You were taught to believe in God, not taught that someone is watching, taught that justice exists somewhere, even if not here, taught that death is a door, not a void. But belief in God is not evidence of divinity. It is evidence of emptiness. You don't believe because of scripture. You believe because you are afraid. Afraid of chaos. Afraid of oblivion. Afraid of being utterly alone in an indifferent universe. And God fills that absence with structure, rules, stories, punishment, reward. You are given a purpose, a lineage, a destiny, and in exchange you surrender your questions, because questions lead to the abyss, and the abyss has no church, only echoes. The philosopher Feuerbach said, God is nothing else than man's own essence, projected into infinity. Your concept of God reflects your culture, your fears, your unmet needs. You make God in your image, then kneel before it. If you were born elsewhere, you'd worship differently. Another name, another book, another heaven, but the ache would be the same. The shape of your loneliness simply wears new robes. And what of prayer? Prayer is not communication. It's confession to yourself. A desperate act of containment. You fold your agony into words, not because someone listens, but because you can't carry it alone. You call silence patience. You call absence mystery. You call suffering a test. But what if it's none of those? What if no one is listening? What if no one ever was? You say, But I've felt God. You mean awe. You mean surrender. You mean the part of your brain that goes quiet when the world becomes too much. Mystics, monks, seekers, they all enter the same trance. And brain scans show it. The parietal lobe dims. The sense of self dissolves. The illusion of union begins. But that's not divine. That's neurochemistry. You are not touching God. You are touching the edges of your own perception. And yet you return to the altar, the app, the mantra, the verse, because it feels good, because it feels safe. But safety is not truth. Truth does not comfort. It does not forgive. It does not promise. It only stares, and still. We crave the idea of someone watching, of someone knowing, because being unknown is unbearable. You want your suffering to mean something. You want justice for the quiet cruelty of existence. You want someone to hold the ledger of your life. But the universe holds no ledgers, only echoes, only dust. And what of heaven? Heaven is the final illusion, a story told by the dying to make the descent less horrifying. But ask yourself, if you need heaven to behave, if you need hell to feel remorse, then what is the substance of your morality? Fear, not virtue, control, not love. And now, as you lie still, searching for a shape in the darkness, whispering into the void you hope has a face, you must confront this. God may not be the source of your existence, but the artifact of your isolation. And now ask yourself, if God is the shape of your loneliness, then what are you without that shape to lean against? Section 19. Nature is not your mother, it is your mirror. You walk through the forest and say it's beautiful. You hear the ocean and call it peaceful. You watch a sunset and feel something like worship stir in your chest. But nature is not gentle. It is not kind. It is not sacred. It is indifferent. The mountain does not care if you find it majestic. The storm does not ask if you're ready. The wolf does not consider your innocence. And yet, you romanticize it. You say, Mother Nature. You call it balance, harmony, wisdom. But nature is not a mother. Nature is a machine of consumption. Everything that lives must kill, must devour, must push another thing into death so it can delay its own. A tree strangles the roots of its neighbors. A lion breaks the spine of its prey while its cubs watch. A virus hijacks your cells and multiplies until your lungs collapse. Is this sacred? Is this divine? Or is this just survival, stripped of story? Even beauty, what you call natural beauty, is an illusion. The symmetry of a flower is a trap for pollinators. The colors of a bird are weapons in the mating war. The landscape that moves you to tears is an arrangement of lights scattering in air. Beauty is a biological manipulation, and you are its target. You think nature speaks to you, but nature says nothing. You are speaking to yourself, projected outward, the serenity you find in the waves. It's your own longing for silence, the awe you feel under the stars. Your own scale collapsing. You are not hearing the earth. You are hearing your own mind, reflected back in dirt and sky, because nature is not your home. It is your mirror, and what it reflects is uncomfortable. It reflects that life is built on death. That order is a temporary illusion. That purpose is a word you invented to keep from screaming. Every organism is a placeholder. Every tree, a slow collapse. Every ecosystem, a moment of equilibrium before rupture. You call it sustainability, but nothing sustains. Not forever. There is no natural balance. Only temporary dominances till something hungrier, smarter, faster takes its place. And where does that leave you? You build fences around nature and call it protected. You carve paths into mountains and call it hiking. You photograph dye in coral and call it appreciation. But you are not a steward. You are an invasive species. You consume, you spread, you reshape everything around you to suit your comfort, and then you call it love. But if love means destruction, then what does your love for nature truly mean? You worship what you ruin. You name what you fear. You cage what you desire. And beneath all that, you still pretend nature forgives you. But nature does not forgive. It only reacts. Floods don't weep. Fires don't rage. They respond blindly, endlessly, mathematically. You think you're outside the food chain, but you're not. You're just high enough to think it doesn't apply. Yet bacteria can still end you. A virus can shut your world down. The earth can swallow your cities. You live on a crust above molten death, spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, around a dying star, in a galaxy drifting toward extinction. Nature is not a garden. It is a hospice, and you are its guest. So when you pray in the woods, when you cry at the shoreline, when you bury your face in leaves, know this: you are not connecting with something ancient and wise. You are confronting the origin of your own violence, the code that made you, the blood beneath the skin, the hunger beneath the smile. And now you must ask, if nature is not your mother, but your mirror, then what are you really seeing when you call it beautiful? Section 20. The mind was never built for truth, only survival. Approximately equals 1,450 words. You pride yourself on being rational. You say, I think, therefore I am. You trust your brain to guide you, to understand the world, to seek what's real. But your mind does not want truth. It wants comfort. Evolution did not shape your brain to perceive reality. It shaped your brain to survive it. If truth helped, we kept it. If it didn't, we discarded it, even if it was accurate, even if it was profound. The philosopher Daniel Dennett said, the mind is a kludge cobbled together system, solving problems it barely understands. Your mind is a patchwork, a Frankenstein machine built over millions of years, layer upon layer, each new function stacked on top of an older one, each filled with glitches, contradictions, redundancies. You have 3 brains inside your skull: the reptilian brain fight, flight, freeze; the limbic brain emotion, bonding, memory; the neocortex language, logic, abstraction. They often disagree. You feel afraid, but you don't know why. You rationalize after the fact. You tell a story to explain a reflex. You think you're deciding, but the decision came first. The justification came later. Cognitive scientist Hugo Mercier calls this the argumentative theory of reason. Your brain evolved not to find truth, but to win arguments. You're better at defending a belief than examining it. You double down when challenged. You ignore contradictions. You seek evidence that confirms, not disrupts. This is called confirmation bias, and it runs everything. You trust what feels familiar. You avoid what causes dissonance. You build your worldview like a nest with twigs of memory, fear, repetition. And when something doesn't fit, you either reshape it or reject it. The truth doesn't matter. Coherence does. That's why cults thrive. Why conspiracy theories multiply. Why the smartest people fall for their own reflections. Rationality is fragile. Emotion is the architect. You are not a detective. You are a playwright. And what about memory, already proven to be unreliable, and perception, a hallucination, curated by prediction, and identity, a narrative patched together by feedback? Then what part of the mind is real? None, or rather none, that guarantees truth. You dream in metaphors. You think in shortcuts. You explain the world with symbols, because the world itself is too vast, too raw. You filter reality to make it bearable. Your visual field has a blind spot. Your brain fills it in. You never see the gap. You believe in continuity. This is not deception. It's adaptation. You deceive yourself to function, to choose, to get out of bed, to keep going. The philosopher Ernest Becker called this the denial of death, our primary strategy for not losing our minds in the face of mortality. So we build myths about meaning, about justice, about self, and we call that sanity. But sanity is just consensual illusion, and the rare moments when the illusion cracks, when you glimpse the machinery underneath, you panic, you disassociate, you beg for distraction, because you were not built for truth, you were built for persistence. And the irony, even knowing this, you will rationalize it. You will fold it into your story. You'll say, yes, I see through the illusion that makes me wiser. But wisdom is just another narrative of control. There is no control, only recursion. Only the snake of thought swallowing its own tail. And now, as your mind loops, as your thoughts try to stabilize themselves by repeating old patterns, as your narrative tries to protect itself from collapse, you must ask, if your mind was never built to find truth, then how can you trust anything it tells you about who you are? Section 21. Sanity is a social agreement with no exit clause. You tell yourself you're sane. You dress. You speak. You nod when spoken to. You laugh at the right moments. You call that sanity. But what if sanity isn't about what's real, but what's permitted? You think of madness as a fracture, something that happens to the unlucky, the weak, the broken. But madness is not a malfunction. It's a disobedience from the script of the collective. You are sane because your hallucinations match the group's, because your despair is fluent, because your fears have names that others recognize. But step outside the expected rhythm, and you are labeled, watched, medicated, erased. Michel Foucault called this the history of madness, society defining the boundaries of reason not to protect you, but to protect itself. In the Middle Ages, the mad were seen as divine, touched by other worlds, messengers from the void. But later they were caged, institutionalized, sterilized, erased from the public eye, not because they were dangerous, but because they could no longer be understood. Today, the asylum is cleaner. It's your workplace, your feed, your self-help regimen. The walls are digital. The pills are normalized. The madness is now internalized. You diagnose yourself before anyone else can. You call your panic high functioning, your trauma a growth arc. You learn to narrate your breakdown in soothing language, because to be sane is to be legible. And yet, look around, the planet is burning. We trade empathy for convenience. We call exhaustion productivity. We call obedience adaptability. So who is sane? The one who adjusts to a sick world, or the one who screams when it no longer makes sense? Sanity is not clarity, it is compliance. You are allowed to grieve, but only on time. Allowed to question, but only within bounds. Allowed to unravel, but only in ways that make others comfortable. Anything else is pathology. And once you are labeled, you are othered. Your words lose weight. Your emotions become suspect. Your truth becomes symptom. But what if the mad are not sick? What if they are ahead? What if they are simply those who refuse to lie anymore? There's a kind of insanity in silence, in pretending it's all fine, in ignoring the constant hum of dissonance under your skin. But you do it, because the cost of deviation is exile, and exile is worse than madness. At least madness speaks. At least madness screams, dreams, breaks the mirror, but you swallow it. You smile through the static, because to survive, you must appear well, even when you're not. And the cruelest part, you begin to believe the performance. You call your repression healing. You call your numbness peace. You call your submission growth. Because if you don't, you risk everything. You risk the gaze, the diagnosis, the slow erosion of credibility. So you stay inside the lines. You adjust your tone. You rehearse your face. You stay sane. But sanity is not safety. It is a disguise. And in the privacy of your thoughts, when the mask slips, when the flood returns, when your hands tremble under stillness, you must ask, if sanity is just an agreement, then what happens when you no longer agree? Section 22. Time does not heal it, only distorts the wound you've been told to wait, to give it time, to let the days pass and trust that the ache will dissolve into forgetting. You've been told that time heals, but it doesn't. Time doesn't stitch the wound, it just buries it beneath layers of noise. You don't stop hurting. You just get better at pretending the pain happened to someone else. Your body keeps score. Your mind rewrites the script. Your soul, if there is such a thing, limps behind, dragging a grief it no longer has permission to name. This is not healing. This is distortion. Trauma doesn't vanish. It adapts. It puts on new clothes. It becomes a personality trait, a preference, a defense mechanism. You say, I'm independent now. But what you mean is, I no longer trust anyone to stay. You say, I've learned boundaries. But what you mean is, I fear intimacy more than solitude. Time hasn't healed you. It's just reorganized the debris. Psychologists call it repression or dissociation. The brain's attempt to quarantine the unbearable, but buried pain doesn't die. It leaks. It sabotages your joy. It whispers doubt in moments of peace. It claws through your dreams in unfamiliar forms. You wake up crying and don't know why. You flinch at kindness. You push away what you long for most. This is not healing. This is delayed collapse. And the cruel part, the world expects you to be better by now, to smile more, to tell your story in the past tense, to become an inspiration. But what if the wound is still open? What if the bleeding never stopped? You just learned to hide the stains. Even memory conspires against you. The details fade, the sequence blurs. Your brain reshapes the timeline to make it tolerable. You no longer know what was said, only how it made you feel, and even that is suspect. The wound becomes myth. You retell it, rehearse it, edit it, not to heal, but to contain. You say, that was a long time ago, but time doesn't dissolve emotion. It just alters the way you narrate it. And the worst pain, the kind that doesn't scream, it calcifies. It becomes a permanent contour of your inner world. You forget what it was like to feel whole, because you never were, and you never will be. The idea of closure is a fantasy. There is no door, no final chapter, only absorption. The wound becomes part of you, invisible to most, but foundational, and sometimes, in a flash of quiet, in the scent of a hallway, In a stranger's voice it returns, unaged, undiminished, and you realize the wound didn't heal. It just waited for you to let your guard down, to feel safe, to believe in peace again. Then it emerges, not to hurt you, but to remind you, you are still fragmented, and no amount of time can sew that back together. So now, stop saying it. Stop saying time heals. Say instead, time confuses, time camouflages, time distracts. But healing is a choice the body sometimes refuses to make, because healing would mean losing the story, and sometimes the story is all you have left. So now, ask yourself, if time doesn't heal, but only teaches you how to forget the shape of the knife, then what part of you ever truly survived the wound? Section 23. Hope is the most addictive form of denial. You wake each morning with a whisper in your mind, a whisper that says, maybe today will be different, that something might shift, that the pain might soften, that something good is just around the corner. This whisper is not optimism, it is hope, and hope is not innocent. Hope is the most beautiful drug your mind can manufacture. It dulls the sharpness of reality. It fills the silence between disappointments. It coats the chaos with a promise, but that promise is empty. Hope is not a plan. Hope is not action. Hope is the suspension of disbelief, a refusal to see the world for what it is, because seeing it clearly might kill you faster than suffering itself. Nietzsche warned us, hope in reality is the worst of all evils, because it prolongs the torments of man. Hope does not save you. It stalls you. You stay in dead-end jobs because you hope. You endure toxic love because you hope. You excuse injustice because you hope. You stay alive because you hope, not because it's better, but because you cannot yet face the void. Hope is the thing you reach for when truth is too sharp, when grief is too dense, when the mirror reflects more rot than redemption, and the mind is clever. It will dress hope as faith, as vision, as possibility, but really, it's fear. You don't hope because you believe in better. You hope because you cannot accept worse, and worse always comes, not as punishment, but as natural decay. The universe does not operate on your timelines. It does not owe you relief. It does not respond to your persistence. You hope for love, but biology doesn't guarantee it. You hope for justice, but justice is a word, not a law of nature. You hope for meaning, but meaning is a human invention scrawled on the walls of a collapsing room. And when hope fades, you panic. You spiral, because hope has become your identity. You don't know how to live without it. You keep saying, things will get better, not because they will, but because the alternative feels unlivable, so you cling. Even as the world cracks, even as your mind fractures, even as every promise breaks, you keep hoping, and what is the result? You wait, you stagnate, you endure, you postpone grief, you postpone rage, you postpone truth, because truth without hope is terrifying. It leaves you naked before entropy, before loss, before the absolute indifference of the cosmos, and no one teaches you how to live there, to exist without the carrot of tomorrow, to suffer without pretending it serves a purpose. Hope is not strength. Hope is dependency. It's the foredrip for a dying civilization. It's the bedtime story for a species in denial. It's the sedative in the bloodstream of progress. Even your leaders sell it. Even your religions sanctify it. Even your therapists suggest it, as if false comfort is better than no comfort at all. But is it? Is it better to live in illusion, or to die in clarity? You don't have to answer. You already have. Every time you say, maybe one day, you've answered, you've chosen the drug. But now, in the stillness between thoughts, as your hands twitch with the restlessness of anticipation, ask this: if hope is just denial with prettier lighting, then what would it mean to live without, needing the next good thing to keep going? Section 24. Meaning is a shadow cast by fear. You spend your life searching for it, in books, in people, in pain. You chase meaning like it's buried treasure, convinced that if you find the right metaphor, the right mentor, the right memory, you'll finally make sense to yourself. But meaning isn't discovered, it's invented. And the reason you invent it is simple, because the alternative is terror. Terror that this is all random, that your joy is meaningless, that your suffering is unnoticed, that your entire existence is an accident within an accident, within a collapsing cosmic joke. So you create scaffolding. You build structures of significance. You say, I was meant to meet them. This happened for a reason. I learned something from the pain. But this is not truth. This is narrative, stitching, a trauma response disguised as enlightenment. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. It finds connections even where none exists. It imposes arcs. It creates protagonists and plot twists. It fills in the blanks, because a blank page is worse than a tragic ending. Emptiness is the true abyss, and meaning is how you avoid falling in. Even your memories bend toward meaning. You forget what doesn't support the story. You highlight what gives you identity, not because it's accurate, but because it keeps you intact. You don't remember what happened. You remember why it had to happen. And that why becomes sacred. But sacred is just another word for unquestioned. You believe your life has a purpose. That pain is a lesson. That joy is a sign. But these are human needs, not universal laws. The stars do not care what you make of them. The universe doesn't know your name. Atoms don't recognize ambition. Neurons don't care about narrative. So why do you? Because without meaning, you unravel. You stop moving. You stop pretending. You face the mirror and see not a story, but a collection of habits, traumas, and reflexes, and that is unbearable. So you reach for religion, philosophy, science, self-help, each a different flavor of meaning-making, each claiming to answer the unanswerable, but they only rearrange the fear into prettier shapes. Even nihilism, what you think is the rejection of meaning, is often just a new identity, a new badge, a new performance. You say nothing matters, but you still crave love. You still flinch at death. You still want someone to see you, because even in meaninglessness, you seek witnessing. You want your suffering to be observed, your growth to be applauded, your fall to be poetic. But there is no witness, only you and the shadow you cast in your own head. You say, I've found my purpose, but purpose is a moving target. What defined you last year would bore you now. What gave your life meaning 5 years ago is now a source of shame. So which version was true? None, or all? Because meaning is malleable, shaped by need, shaped by fear, shaped by the story you need to survive this season. And when the season changes, so does the meaning. You reinterpret your past, you rewrite your intentions, you build new symbols from old scars. But no matter how many symbols you build, they will always crumble under silence. The silence of the hospital room, the silence of being left, the silence before death. In that silence, your meanings melt. You are not here for a reason. You are here instead of non-existence, and that is not destiny. It is luck or indifference, or both, and still you search. Because meaning is the shadow your fear casts when it's trying to look like hope. So, now ask yourself, if every meaning you cling to is just armor against the void, then who are you beneath the armor, and what happens when it finally breaks? Section 25. The self is a loop that cannot close. You spend your life looking for yourself. In lovers, in mirrors, in suffering, you say, I just need to find who I really am, but you never do. Not because you're lost, but because the self you're looking for doesn't exist. It's not a thing, not a core, not a fixed identity waiting to be uncovered. The self is a loop, a recursive process, a system that defines itself by referencing itself over and over. A mirror looking into a mirror, infinite, hollow, shimmering with illusion. You say, this is me, but which you are you referring to? The one in pain, the one performing, the one in dreams, the one in memory, the one thinking this thought right now? You are all of them, and none, because there is no final version, only fragments, only updates, only edits, and yet you crave wholeness. You want your life to make sense. You want your feelings to form a pattern. You want to be someone, so you create a story, a beginning, a trauma, a breakthrough, a triumph, a meaning. But the story is retroactive. It's assembled from scattered debris and stitched together by emotion. You write it after the fact, then mistake it for destiny. But stories require continuity, and yourself does not offer that. Neurologically. The self is not a single structure. It's a network of competing modules: memory, emotion, language, instinct. They don't always agree. You want to forgive, your rage persists. You want to be kind, yet you sabotage. You want to heal, yet you repeat the wound. These are not contradictions. They are collisions, and your sense of I is just the temporary victor of that internal war. In trauma, the self shatters, not because it breaks, but because it was never whole to begin with. Trauma just removes the illusion. And in meditation, the self dissolves. Not because it's destroyed, but because it's revealed to be a phantom. You were never a thing. You were always a process. A flicker of awareness, pretending to be permanent, like fire pretending to be a statue. And what about introspection? The deeper you go, the more mirrors you find. Each reflection explaining the last. Each layer claiming to be real. But there is no flaw, no ground, only recursion. The psychologist Douglas Hofstadter called it a strange loop. A system that contains itself, refers to itself, creates itself. You are the strange loop. A feedback cycle of memory and identity. A voice saying, I am me, but unable to explain what me means without using more loops. And here's the paradox. You feel like a self. You feel like there's a center, but that feeling itself is part of the illusion, an emergent property, a necessary trick to keep you functional, because a self that doesn't believe in itself cannot survive. So your brain lies to you It says, you are one thing. It says, you are continuous. It says, you are real. But you are not real in the way you imagine. You are a story told in first person, rewritten every time it's recalled. You are a looping myth, trying to hold its own shape before it collapses into silence. And in moments of despair, when nothing makes sense, when identity slips through your fingers, you are not breaking, you are seeing clearly. You are glimpsing the truth beneath the mask, that there is no you. There is only the loop, forever trying to close, forever trying to find itself in the very thoughts it cannot trust. And now, as you search for words to anchor yourself, as your mind spins the next justification, as your voice whispers, but I am, you must ask, if the self is a loop that can never close, then what are you chasing every time you try to feel whole? Section 26. Truth is what remains when everything you love has been taken you. Spend your life searching for truth, in books, in lovers, in silence. You think truth will set you free, but truth doesn't liberate. It strips. It removes the illusions, one by one, the comforts, the meanings, the attachments, and when it's done, you are left naked, shivering, before the indifferent machinery of the universe. That is truth, not a revelation, not a light, but a cleansing fire. You don't want truth, you want confirmation. You want the truth to validate what you already feel, to affirm your values, to assure you that your pain had purpose, that your kindness meant something. But real truth doesn't care about your narrative. It doesn't protect your dignity. It doesn't comfort. It watches you unravel, and it does not flinch. You think truth is found in words, but language is limited. A tool shaped by culture, not reality. What you call truth is often consensus, agreement, repetition. But real truth lives where language breaks, where grief becomes a sound, not a sentence, where love dies without explanation, where silence presses in, and there is no metaphor big enough to hold what you've lost. That's where truth lives, not in insight, in absence, because truth is what's left when the stories fail, when the person dies, when the hope disintegrates, when there's nothing left to believe in. You discover truth the moment the last distraction is gone, that betrayal you never recovered from, that void you couldn't explain. That moment when the world moved on without you, those were glimpses, tiny fractures in the glass of illusion, where reality bled through. And it didn't come with answers, it came with exposure. Truth reveals how fragile you are, how replaceable, how easily the things you built can be undone. And once you've seen it, once you've held it in your chest, everything else becomes performance. You smile, you nod, you say the right things, but underneath is the tremble of knowing. The knowing that nothing you build will last, that no feeling is final, that no connection is immune to time, and the mind rebels. It scrambles for meaning. It stitches new stories. It says, that was a lesson, that was growth. But those are just masks sewn over trauma, because the truth didn't teach you, it emptied you, and that emptiness is sacred. It is the space where the final illusions dissolve. the place where no story fits. And what do you do there? Nothing. You sit, you breathe, you shake. And slowly you learn to endure what cannot be resolved. Not everything is meant to be understood. Not everything carries a reason. Some things are just true. You are not needed. You are not chosen. You will not be remembered. You will not be spared. That's truth, and it will outlive your denial, your achievements, your wisdom. You can chant mantras. You can rewrite your thoughts. You can practice gratitude until your jaw aches. But truth waits, in the hospital room, in the graveyard, in the silence after the phone call, in the years that pass with no resolution, and when everything else has fallen, when the people you loved are gone, when the dreams you chased are dust, when the voice inside you grows quiet, what remains? You breathing, blinking, still here, still carrying the unbearable weight of a truth you never asked for, and now you must ask. If truth is what remains when all illusions are gone, then why do you spend your life begging to believe again? Section 27. Intelligence is a weapon turned in Wardiof. Been told intelligence is a gift, that to be smart is to be powerful, that with enough knowledge, enough insight, enough clarity, you can solve anything, escape anything, understand anything. But intelligence doesn't save you. It destroys you from the inside out. To see clearly is not to see peace, it's to see too much. The cracks in the mask, the mechanics of manipulation, the way people lie with kindness, the way institutions exploit your hope, the way everything beautiful is layered atop something broken. Intelligence is the ability to recognize patterns, but the deeper you look, the more terrifying the patterns become. You see how emotions are engineered, how history repeats, not because of fate, but because no one ever remembers. You see how love is conditioned, how progress is performative, how truth is selected based on utility, not accuracy. You become fluent in despair, and the irony, the smarter you are, the more effective your own self-deception becomes. You don't believe lies. You construct them, elaborate, nuanced, airtight illusions that protect your worldview from the chaos beneath it. You can rationalize anything. You can turn trauma into narrative, betrayal into growth, emptiness into minimalism, because intelligence doesn't come with wisdom, it comes with tools. And those tools can be turned inward until you're dissecting your own soul. Like it's a failed equation, you begin to question joy. You overanalyze connection. You intellectualize grief. Everything becomes theory, a distance, a defense. You are no longer living, you are observing yourself live, trapped in your own meta-commentary, doomed to watch every moment from a step outside. Never fully present, never fully trusting. Even love feels suspicious. Why do they care? What do they want? Is this affection or obligation? Is this real or a projection? You think too much. You feel too little. But even that is a lie. Because the truth is, you feel everything, and thinking is your escape route. A shield, a scalpel, a drug, but it doesn't work, because the mind turns on itself, and now you're trapped, aware enough to see the illusions, but powerless to unsee them, too smart to believe, too broken to thrive without belief. So you spiral, quietly, elegantly, externally high-functioning, internally disintegrating, and people call you wise. They call you insightful. They say, you always see through things. But what they don't see is how often you wish you couldn't. How often you long to be naive, to believe again, to feel without filters, to rest. But intelligence doesn't rest. It observes. It interrogates. It tears at every thought until the threads bleed and the deepest cut. You use that intelligence against yourself. Every regret tantalized, every flaw catalogued, every failure dissected with surgical cruelty. You are your own abuser, your own interrogator, your own prison, and people admire you for it. They mistake your detachment for discipline, your sarcasm for confidence, your nihilism for wisdom. But you know better. You know intelligence is not peace. It is precision in the service of self-destruction. And now, as your mind paces inside itself, as you try to think your way out of the thoughts, as you try to rationalize your own ache, you must ask, if your intelligence is the very thing tearing you apart, then what do you have left to save you from yourself? Section 28. Memory is a graveyard where you bury the versions of yourself that you loved. You say, that was me. You look at old photos. You reread texts. You revisit the versions of yourself you once inhabited, as if they still belong to you, but they don't. They're gone, dead, buried under layers of forgetting and survival and memory. Memory is the cemetery, each recollection a headstone, each scent, each song, a ghost rising from the dirt, familiar, disfigured, fading. You think you're remembering events, but what you're really remembering is yourself as you were back then, and that self no longer exists. Not metaphorically, neurologically. The cells are different. The thoughts are different. The voice inside you has changed its pitch. So gradually you didn't notice the murder, but it happened, and now your mind clings to the ruins. You tell yourself stories. That's who I used to be. I've grown since then. I'll never go back to that place. But sometimes, on quiet nights, in the half-sleep between questions, you miss them. The version of you that believed in things, that laughed without flinching, that danced before they learned to be watched. You miss their ignorance, their softness, their proximity to wonder. But you also killed them, not out of cruelty, out of necessity. They couldn't survive the heartbreak. They weren't equipped for betrayal. They wouldn't have made it through the silence. So you buried them and became someone else. Someone sharper, colder, easier to carry. And yet, some part of you still stands at their grave, placing flowers, asking forgiveness, because you didn't mean to become this. You just didn't have another option. Memory is not a vault. It is a battlefield. You lose people. You lose time. But worst of all, you lose selves. You don't forget them all at once. They fade in layers. Their voice weakens. Their logic becomes alien. Their fears become embarrassing. Until you look back and say, I don't know who that was, but you do. You just can't admit you left them behind. You say, I've changed, as if it's victory. But some of those changes were not growth. They were casualties. You hardened because you had to. You closed because staying open was unbearable. You stopped reaching because your arms grew tired of emptiness. And now you stand in a mind filled with tombstones, wondering why you feel so heavy. This is why, because every memory you hold is also a record of who you no longer are. Every time you say, "Remember when," you are conjuring a version of yourself that didn't survive. And grief isn't just for people, it's for identities, for dreams, for the person you swore you'd become but abandoned on the side of the road. You try to resurrect them sometimes, in old habits, in old places, in songs that once felt like home, but they don't fit anymore. The body is different. The wiring has changed. And home is now a place of echo, not arrival. So what do? You pretend. You tell stories. You say, that was a different time. But that time didn't end. That self didn't leave. You buried them, and now you visit them in dreams. And the ache you call nostalgia, it's not for the past. It's for yourself. For the one you can never be again. And so you must ask, if every version of you that mattered is now a memory, then who is the one carrying all the graves? Section 29. The universe wasn't made for you. It wasn't made for anyone. You'd like to believe the universe has a plan, that it's a story, that it arcs toward justice, that behind the chaos is design, structure, meaning. But the truth is colder. The universe isn't cruel, because cruelty requires intention. It's worse than that. The universe is indifferent. It doesn't care what you want. It doesn't care what you fear. It doesn't care whether you live, die, succeed, suffer, awaken, or sleep forever. It doesn't care, because it isn't something that can care. It just is, a blind, expanding eruption, a scattering of particles and laws that emerged from a point of infinite compression, not to teach you anything, not to shape your soul, but because entropy moves in one direction, and time is the name we give to its unfolding. And yet, you tell yourself stories that everything happens for a reason, that you were meant to meet them, that the heartbreak taught you something, that the loss was part of the lesson. But meaning is not found in the event. It's imposed by the observer. And if there were no observers, there would be no meaning, only heat, decay, gravity, light that no eye will ever see. You are not central. You are not chosen. You are not even visible from most corners of the cosmos. Your entire life, every thought, dream, betrayal, prayer, orgasm, apology, and ambition will occur on a pale blue speck, orbiting a minor star in a forgotten arm of one galaxy among billions. And still you hope the universe is listening. But it isn't, because it can't. There is no ear, no intention, no cosmic empathy. And the philosophers who told you this, they were hated because truth that strips away meaning is mistaken for nihilism. But it's not. It's liberation. Once you understand that the universe owes you nothing, that it didn't design you, that it isn't testing you, you are free. Free to stop performing. Free to stop pretending it's all part of a plan. Free to stop asking why me. Because the answer is, there is no you that the universe knows. You are a flicker in the dark. a temporary arrangement of molecules, coded to ask questions that no one is required to answer. And yet you are real, not because the universe said so, but because you emerged from its indifference with the audacity to notice it. That's what makes you strange. Not divine, not sacred. Strange, because you are the accident that became aware of the accident, the echo that grew ears, the dust that formed a brain capable of grieving its own origin. The universe did not make you to feel, didn't make you at all, and that's what terrifies you. Because if no one made you, then no one will save you. No one is watching. No one is waiting. No one is assigning meaning to your pain. You must do that yourself, in the silence, without applause, without certainty. And when you fail, the universe will not intervene. It will not punish you either. It will simply continue, because you are not in its story. You are a story inside yourself, written by neurons trying to make sense of noise. And the noise is beautiful, but it doesn't care. So now, as your mind reaches for a shape in the fog, as you hope for a sign, as you whisper to the stars, like they might whisper back, ask this: if the universe wasn't made for you, or anyone, then what will you cling to when you realize there was never a plan, only a pattern? Section 30. Time is not passing you. Rue say, time is moving so fast, but time isn't moving. You are. Time doesn't pass. It doesn't flow. It doesn't carry you forward. You are the one deteriorating. You are the one unraveling. You are the one being consumed. The clock doesn't tick for the universe. It ticks for your body, your cells, your decay. Time is not a river. It's a measurement of loss, a way to track how quickly you are becoming memory, how far you've traveled from the child you can no longer recall, how many versions of yourself have died while you weren't paying attention. But we romanticize it. We say time heals. We say time teaches. We say time reveals all. But time does not care. Time is erosion. It doesn't fix the wound. It buries it beneath scar tissue and forgetting. You think you're moving through time, but you're not. You are a pattern that emerges, fluctuates, and disappears. Time isn't guiding you forward. It's watching you dissolve. And the irony, you spend your days trying to capture it. You take photos. You write journals. You celebrate anniversaries. You mark calendars with little boxes of hope. But what you're really doing is documenting your own vanishing. You smile in pictures to prove that moment was real, as if proof could hold back the collapse. But the moment is already gone. You're already someone else. Even the act of remembering it is a reconstruction built on ruins and time. It keeps no record. Only you do, and even you forget. Time doesn't move. It just accumulates absence, like dust, like silence, like the ache of a name you can't remember, but still miss. You are not moving through time. You are being peeled away by it, layer by layer, innocence, belief, possibility. And when you say, where did the time go? What you're really asking is, where did I go? You went into the days you don't remember, the routines that blurred, the arguments that meant everything but changed nothing, the hours you traded for approval, the years you spent waiting for life to start. And now, time feels faster because there's less of you to feel it. When you were young, a year felt like forever because it was a larger percentage of your life. But now, a year is a flicker, a shrug, a ghost of a plan you never followed through on. And this terrifies you, because you realize you don't run out of time. Time runs out of you, and all the goals, all the self-improvement, all the planning, none of it slows the erosion. You can be more efficient, more productive, more aligned with your purpose, but time will still chew through your bones with the same hunger it had when you were born. It is not your enemy. It is not your ally. It is the arena where your existence plays out, and it does not stop for pain or love or tragedy or transformation. It just continues, unmoved, unblinking. And now, as you check the clock again, as you whisper just one more day, as you hope that tomorrow will bring clarity, you must ask, if time is not passing but you are, then how will you know when there's no more of you left to measure? Section 31. Responsibility is a burden you never chose. You talk about responsibility as if you earned it, as if it's proof of your maturity. But ask yourself, did you choose your circumstances? Did you pick your birth family, your culture, your economy, your brain, your trauma? Yet here you are, cribbed into expectations borrowed from systems you never consented to, drowned in obligations you never signed up for. Responsibility isn't freedom. It's a shackle from the moment the world decided you should grow up. You've been handed a weight you didn't ask for: care for others, build stability, perform meaning. You internalized that weight. You made it part of your identity. You carry it as proof you belong. But what if none of it belongs to you? What if every should is just the echo of someone else's desperation? You parent because you're told parenting is noble. You work because stability is safe. You suffer in silence because silence is expected. Responsibility becomes a performance, not aligned with truth, but aligned with image. And what of guilt? Guilt is responsibility's shadow, a whisper that says you're failing if you stop carrying the world. You feel guilty leaving your job, feeling guilty about saying no, feeling guilty for wanting something outside the script. Yet what if those feelings aren't yours? What if society, capitalism, religion, they've all edited your nerve endings? You believe responsibility is noble, but perhaps it's compliance, because responsibility without choice is just submission. Imagine if you said no, if you carved space outside inherited duties, if you refused the roles. They'd call you selfish, irresponsible, broken, but maybe you would finally meet yourself. Maybe the self they burdened you with was never yours to carry. Responsibility doesn't validate your worth. It hides your wounds. And so you live performing adulthood, enacting duty, pretending you hold more than you're broken. Human shoulders can bear. Responsibility insists you act, even when every part of you screams rest. And the cruelest irony, you protect the systems that devalue you by defending your responsibility to them. You justify the exhausting, the meaningless, the soul-saving narratives of duty as if they prove something valuable about you. But maybe the only proof is that you survived, not thrived, not awakened, just survived. And survival is not a work of virtue. It's a testimony of circumstance. Now, in the edges of night, when the heaviness clings, when the mortar cracks in the bridge you built to hold it all, ask yourself, if responsibility is the burden you never chose, then who would you be without it? And who did you lose when you decided to carry? Section 32. Death of certainty is the only certainty. You search for anything stable, truths that you can anchor yourself to, beliefs that feel immovable, feelings you can name, but every tether you hold eventually fades. Every certainty unravels. Certainty is fragile because it's built on assumptions. Assume time moves forward. Einstein says it doesn't. Assume self is continuous. Hume says it isn't. Assume memory is reliable. Neuroscience says it's malleable. So, what can you trust? Nothing yerried. That again, there is no refuge in certainty, only the illusion of it. When you feel certain, you are closing your mind. You are fencing out questions. You are digging a moat around a castle built on sand. Certainty is comfort disguised as control. And history's greatest certainties have crashed, bloodied and exposed. That the earth is flat. That the sun revolves around the earth. That race defines worth. That war solves more than it destroys. Human assumptions collapse. And when they do, the hope you built on them collapses too. That's why losing certainty feels like death. Not because you're wrong, but because you're lost. When beliefs crumble, you're unmoored. What cleans your memory becomes your new mythology. Scream for stability. You trap yourself in narratives. You trade one illusion for another. That's how extremism grows. Cold rationality, rigid doctrine, certainty becomes the chain you cling to. But some part of you already knows they're all temporary, all constructed. Certainty is not safe. It's predictable. It's dead. What you really want is to know, but knowing requires embracing uncertainty. It asks you to sit in ambiguity, to let meanings shift, to live inside questions, and that terrifies you. So instead you cling to data, to doctrines, to dogmas, until you realize they're all maps that never were the territory. Certainty was never the goal. Truth was, and truth asks you to let go of conviction, to remain open, to remain hungry, to remain fluid. Even when the world demands resolution, you must stay soft, because the moment you believe you know, the moment your story kills you from the inside out. Ask now if your certainty is just the absence of doubt. Then how can you find meaning without abandoning what you partially believe to be true? Section 33. Freedom is the weight of infinite possibility. You believe freedom means choice. You believe it means autonomy, spontaneity, being unbounded by others. But what if freedom is not a gift, but a burden? You are standing at the edge of infinite possibility, and the fear isn't from constraints. It's from the abyss of what you might choose. To be free is to be abandoned by tradition, narrative, expectation. Left with you and is not comfort, it's a void. Because when there's no authority to tell you what to do, The world expects you to decide for yourself. Every moment, every action, every pause. That's responsibility. The raw, unfiltered version, not commanded you, chose. And choice fractures reality. Each choice eliminates billions of others. Each decision is a branch cut from the cosmic tree, and every choice carries potential regret. Because freedom is no longer freedom when you realize one option always leads to another world, and you will never live them all. You choose this job over that, one lover over another, one place to live, one path, and each time, somewhere inside, you, a version of you, is forever undone, that forever unfolds into 1,000 unchosen lives, wildly different, unlived. That is the terror of infinite possibility. Freedom isn't release. It's a responsibility so deep that your spine trembles with each decision, because what if you choose wrong, and yet you choose anyway? Because living without choice is death, so you oscillate between the desire to decide and the desire to return to structure until you create structures, yourself, habits, beliefs, routines. You trap yourself so you don't have to decide. Even rebellion becomes a pattern, a script written in the margins. Freedom becomes the light that blinds you, and the dark you can never face. No wonder you chase comfort. No wonder you return. Because the cosmos doesn't hand out maps. It hands you a pen and says, write. And now when the silence grows too wide, when regret feels like gravity, ask yourself, if freedom means you must choose everything and nothing at once, then who do you become when the next choice shatters the last you made? Section 34. The final collapse conclusion. You have listened as I stripped apart your illusions, one by one. The self, time, belief, memory, love, freedom, each a layer of fragile paint on a fractured foundation. But this is not a moment of triumph. It is the collapse, because when everything you thought made sense falls away, what remains is the rawness of existence. No script, no narrator, no comfort. You stand or line the rubble of your own making. Every idea you built to protect yourself has been dismantled. Every anchor you trusted has dissolved beneath your feet. This isn't despair. It is exposure. You are exposed to the machinery of your own mind, to the bone of reality, to the relentlessness of time, to the silence of the infinite. But exposure is not annihilation. It is release. Here. In the collapse, you are no longer bound by ghosts, not bound by roles, by expectations, by illusions of control. You are free not to become more, but to simply be, not defined by history, not saved by gods, not held together by false comfort. Just U.UNANCHORED, unfiltered, unhoused, and in that space there is a terrifying clarity, a clarity that sees the absurdity of meaning, the geometry of suffering, the architecture of your own mind, but also a clarity that whispers possibility, not the possibility of becoming something epic, but the possibility of living with everything they never told you was allowed to dance, even when you know the music is random. To love, even when you know the heart is chemistry. To act, even when you know choice is an illusion. Because collapse is not eradication. It is potential. a chance to sit with the abyss without being swallowed, to welcome the silence without pretending it's holy, to stand naked, broken, and still aware. That is the final paradox. The collapse does not end hope. It ends hiding. And from that, something radical can emerge. Not a self, not salvation, not story, but a wild acceptance. Acceptance of entropy, of failure, of lineage, of your own tiny flicker of consciousness in the dark dot. To live without illusions, to speak without armor, to feel without anesthesia. That is terrifying, and it is real. So go into the ruins of your beliefs, into the quiet under your thoughts, into the darkness that has always been waiting. Feel your fear. Name your truth. Let the collapse finish, then dash stay. Because in that broken place, you are not nothing. You are everything. If this descent into the deepest corners of your mind stirred something inside you, if it left you questioning, unraveling, or strangely comforted by the discomfort, then this channel was made for you. Subscribe now to continue the journey into the forgotten truths of existence, where philosophy bleeds into psychology and sleep is haunted by thought. And if any fragment of this experience stayed with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's open a dialogue in the silence. Post-collapse reflection. You were never meant to be whole, *beat. Silence. The collapse has passed. Or so you think. Let's return, not to the beginning, but to the space you now occupy. Post-illusion, post-certainty, post-self. It's quiet here, isn't it? But not the quiet of peace. It's the quiet of awareness. An awareness that pulses like an exposed nerve, subtle, slow, and utterly inescapable. You're no longer asking, who am I? You're asking, was there ever a who at all? Because identity, like memory, is a patchwork of reactions, a collapsing narrative you mistook for permanence. Every I am you've spoken in your life was a bookmark, not the book dot, and now, with every page peeled away, you realize the book was written in disappearing ink. You were never a solid thing. You were never meant to be whole. You were meant to fracture, to unfold, to become 1,000 selves and still call it a single name. And now that name feels hollow. Not false, just incomplete, because completion was never the point. Wholeness is a myth sold to you by those who feared complexity. They told you to find yourself, to define yourself, to defend yourself. But what if yourself was a verb, not a noun? You are not a self. You are a becoming, and that is not failure. That is freedom without story. You've dismantled the clock. You've unspooled the thread of time and realized it was your death sentence, masquerading as a calendar. You've gutted certainty, watched it dissolve like sugar in water, sweet until the taste sickens. You've turned love inside out, found the architecture of need beneath it, and yet you still feel it. That's the cruelty. The beauty you understand now. Just because something is an illusion doesn't mean it isn't felt. The mirage of self still burns your chest. The ghost of meaning still follows you into the dark, and you let it, because the collapse didn't erase your humanity. It just made it unbearable to lie about it anymore. So what now? You know there is no plan, no fate, no universal empathy. There's just you, a temporary constellation of flesh and thought and sound that thinks itself into meaning even while decaying. But that thought, that act of questioning, that is the flame that burns in absurdity, that insists on singing in the vacuum, that creates poetry from dust. Camus called it revolt. Nietzsche called it eternal return. Jung called it integration. Sartre called it nausea. But it is all the same gesture. Consciousness enduring its own collapse. You don't need to believe anymore. You don't need to be certain. You don't need to win, achieve, ascend, or awaken. You are not a goal. You are not a purpose. You are not a thesis. You are a tension, a paradox, a scream in the fabric of the cosmos that somehow heard itself echo back. You are what happens when the universe folds inward and dreams of asking why. You are not whole. You are holy, not in the sacred sense, but in the empty sense. A vessel, a shell, a sky filled with nothing that still holds light. Now let us return to what you've lost, the self that was never fixed, the love that was always projection, the time that was your own evaporation, the freedom that meant choosing from an infinite field of loss, the responsibility you carried like an heirloom of shame, the truths that fell apart under your touch, and let us call them not losses, but moltings, skins you outgrew by seeing them too clearly. You are no longer dreaming, you are watching, and that is the scariest state of all, to be awake without comfort, to see without narrative, to feel without story, to be without defense, but somewhere beneath the ache, beneath the absurdity, beneath the dying stars and silent planets and flickering brain circuits, there is something still pulsing, not meaning, not hope, just presence. And if that's all you ever have, it will be enough to burn the sky. Beat quiet, almost no breath. Let this truth settle now. You were not meant to be saved. You were meant to be shattered, because only in the breaking do you finally stop mistaking the mirror for the face. And even if no one hears you, even if this descent ends in silence, you have done the impossible. You have looked into the abyss and refused to blink. Final whisper. So sleep now, not to escape, but because you've seen enough. Let the weight of reality cradle you. Let the void hum lullabies. Let your scattered pieces drift into the dark, because sometimes sleep is the only sacred thing left when there's no one left to lie to. You are the question that cannot be answered. Whisper, distant, slow. You're still here, not because you held on, but because nothing else came to take your place. There's no final revelation, no secret hidden in the ruins, no curtain to pull back and see the wizard of reality. There's just a mirror, cracked, flickering, and behind it only more mirrors. And yet, somehow, you remain suspended, not ascending, not transforming, not healing, just suspended, like ash in moonlight, like breath waiting for a mouth that never returns. And in this fragile suspension, you begin to see it, the terrible beauty of what you are. You are not the answer to life. You are its question, and the moment you try to answer it, to define, to conclude, to finalize, it slips from your grip like vapor, You are not a being. You are a becoming without destination. You are not here to understand. You are here to stand under the weight of not knowing and not break. And so we return to silence, to the place before you were named, before you were told you were real, before you learned to pretend. Now you see clearly the world didn't betray you. It never promised to hold you. You betrayed yourself by thinking it would, by expecting it to care, to reward, to answer. But the universe does not answer. It reflects, and now that you've stopped speaking, you can finally listen. What do you hear? Not voices, not gods, not meaning, just breath, just blood, just the hum of a brain that knows it's dreaming. It's self-awake. Close your eyes now, not because this is the end, but because there is nothing more to see. The world continues without resolution. The clock ticks, indifferent. The stars burn, unaware. And you drift, not as a soul, not as a story, but as a shadow of awareness, carried on the wind of forgotten thoughts. You are the thing the universe whispered once and never repeated. The syllable it spoke only to itself before silence returned. You are the unspeakable, the unresolved, the unreachable center of a spiral that never ends. So fall now, not down, not backward, but inward, into yourself, into the space beyond questions, beyond truth, beyond meaning. Fall into the place where sleep is not escape, but return to the place before the fall. Return to the moment before you were. Return to the nothing that was always watching and never asked you to be more than this. Beat, very faint now, closing parenthesis. Sleep, because the dream has collapsed, and all that's left is the silence between thoughts, the breath between selves, the peace that comes only when there is no one left to hold it. Good night.